What's up, San Antonio? It's your girl JJ going live on Facebook during this COVID-19 year. I'm going to be talking a little bit about sports, music, things going on in San Antonio, and even a special guest or two may pop in. Feel free to share, comment throughout the show, and I hope you enjoy. Well, today, everybody, I have a very iconic special guest. He is a two-time Billboard Radio Personality of the Year. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as one of the top 100 personalities of all time. He's also in the Texas Radio Hall of Fame. He's hosted morning drive shows on KTFM, KSMG, and he's also a motivational speaker, delivering personal presentations nationally and worldwide. Please help me welcome Mr. Sonny Melendrez.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. You read that just exactly as I wrote it.
Sonny, I have been following your career since a long, long time, and it is an honor to have you on the show today.
The pleasure is all mine, believe me.
Well, as you know, you have been in the business for quite some time. You have done some amazing, amazing things in your career. And what have you been doing? How have you been doing?
I've been doing well. As a matter of fact, when COVID hit in the world of speaking, everything got turned upside down because all of a sudden, all of these conventions, all of these conferences, et cetera, where I would normally go to speak, all got canceled, postponed, and it's still really in that same state. However, the silver lining is that many companies and many associations and conferences went online. Mm-hmm. And so they are now doing Zoom type meetings. In fact, I'm getting ready to do a big convocation next week that will, allow me to do what I do in my home studio. And then as time goes on and we get back to being hopefully the new norm of being able to be on stages, that'll transcend. But I think there's a lot of companies that are going to be able to do this in the future this way and afford give attendees the decision whether they want to go and spend the time online or whether they want to go in person. So it's exciting.
Well, speaking of one of the events that may have gotten canceled, I've had the privilege to hear some of your motivational speaking engagements. I've seen you host numerous events like the annual Safety Patrol Rally at the Alamodome, which, obviously you didn't get to do this year. I know I have a few parents on here and coaches that are listening today who work with patrols. What is the message you would like to send to them? I know you always say at these rallies, dream big.
No, absolutely. And, so many of these kids have big dreams, and I can relate directly to them because at one point I was not only in the safety patrol, but I was also already dreaming big of what I wanted to do in the world of entertainment. But my message to them is, first of all, if you are an educator or if you're a parent, you must know that the advantage that our kids today have is that they never knew a world or have never known a world without the internet. Mm-hmm. And they can do just about everything that you and I can do and more, whether it's on Facebook or any of the other platforms, but they know how to use technology to their great advantage. Mm-hmm. And so as time goes on, I think they're going to be able to, to use it in many other ways throughout their adult life. But I do believe that the main thing we want to do is to stay strong for our kids, definitely, to give them the ability to tell us how they're feeling. Mm-hmm. And, as parents and educators, we, especially guys, I think, we want to fix things. Mm-hmm. And sometimes what people need more than anything else, especially kids, is to be listened to. And when you listen to them, you're able to allow them to um, tell you their fears, or in some cases their dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we must not stop dreaming. We must not stop being positive. And we have so much more uh, to live for, but we have to be strong for our kids.
Some of those things you are saying have hit so close to home with me coming from you. And I'll get to that a little bit later, but at the beginning of the show, I touched on your radio career. But what a lot of people don't know is that you're actually an actor or a voiceover actor. What was your big break into that?
Well, actually, the acting and everything else came from very early stages of my life. If I take you back to when I was a teenager, 12, 13 years old, I was already doing stand-up comedy.
Oh, wow.
And while I was going to Central Catholic, I belonged to this troupe of entertainers, and I was the MC comedian. And we would go. We had folklorico dancers. We even had a mime. We had different people, kids that were all performers, and we would go to the Air Force Base, to Kelly. We'd go to hospitals, and we'd entertain. We weren't getting paid or anything, but we were entertained. So that was my entree into the world of entertainment.
Wow.
At the same time, because I see what inspired me was the comedians that I saw on television, and especially the impressionists.
Okay.
And so I would do these impressions of the different people, and in fact singers as well at the time.
Oh, wow.
And the impressions I would do would we get a lot of great response. But I'll tell you the turning point, the thing that just kind of all of a sudden just launched me into this nonstop world of entertainment. And that was, I'll never forget the night. It was a citywide talent show that was being held at, because I went to Central Catholic High School,
Mm-hmm.
and it was being held at Incarnate Word High School. And it was all the high schools together,
Okay.
and it was in the round. They had a stage right in the middle of the gym, and then everyone else was sitting down. There were no chairs, so everybody's just sitting down on the floor. And it was like hundreds and hundreds of kids. And the guy in charge of the program went to Central Catholic. And when I first found out about it, because there's always going to be singers. The time folk singing was really big. So there was all these folk singers that were going to be singing with guitars, etc. And I told him, I said, listen, I want to do the comedy interlude. And he said, Melendrez, what are you talking about? I said, have you watched on TV? And you have all these singers, and you have a comedian in the middle of the show. And he said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I have an act. You have an act, and he's making fun of me, and there's other guys there all laughing at me. And he says, well, we'll see. Well, that's all I needed. All I needed was that we'll see. And so I worked on my act. I had it all down. I had all these impressions and everything ready to go. And the night of the event, I show up, and everybody's casual, right? So I've got a suit on. I'm ready to go. I'm a performer.
Uh-huh.
And I was in the bathroom, rehearsing my act, and I wasn't even on the program.
Oh,
but somehow I knew that something was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, at the intermission, the guy who's in charge came up to me. He says, "Hey, Melendrez, you still have that act?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Okay, well, first act and the second half didn't show up, so we're going to put you on." I said, "All right, put me on." And I remember I had inside the coat pocket of my jacket, I had this sign that had on one side it said, and this was in case people were rowdy, because I was thinking to myself, okay, what's the worst that can happen? Mm-hmm. They'll start heckling me. And so on one side of the sign, this little strip of cardboard, it said, "Cool it." And on the other side, in case nothing happened and they just didn't react at all, I had on the other side written, "Please applaud." So I'm ready to go. I'm ready for anything.
Uh-huh.
So I go out and everybody was just I got a great introduction. In fact, it was one of the DJs, KONO. His name is Don Kauser, and so he gave me a wonderful introduction. And I come on, and people were I don't know, they were talking or something, and I said, "All right, cool it." And when I said "cool it," I forgot about the sign. I just said it. I blurted out "cool it." They all laughed, and I thought, "Oh my God, they laughed at just cool." Oh, wait till they hear what I'm going to say. So I not only, this is the real turning point in my life. Mm-hmm. All my life, as a kid, especially as a teenager, I've been real shy. And I know that, especially when I see these kids, whether it's at the Alamo Dome or any of the schools, etc., you can see the kids who are very shy, but I know that inside that shy child is this big dreamer, mm-hmm. and someone who really, wants to do something and has big dreams and big ideas for themselves. And that's how I felt, but I just didn't know how to do it socially. So when I did this act, I not only did these different impressions, but I also did singing impressions. And I did singing impressions of singers who were popular at the time. They were kind of like the Justin Bieber and different people who are popular now. It was that version of them. And so I'm doing these a cappella impressions, and I sounded just like them. Mm-hmm. So that the audience went crazy. They're applauding. It's just unbelievable. So afterwards, there was a dance. Back then, it was called a sock hop because you danced and you took your shoes off and everybody's in their socks. And so at the dance, all these girls are coming up to me and they're all saying, "Oh, you were so great. You're so," and my personality changed like that. And I was like Mr. Confident. I was, just in control. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? This is the way life is supposed to be. So that was what got me launched into the world of entertainment. And so then as time went on, I graduated in Central Catholic, and I went to San Antonio College. Well, at San Antonio College, and I'll backtrack and tell you that when I was, just a preteen and teen, of course, I lived at home, but our home was actually my father's barbershop. My dad had a barbershop on a little strip center at the corner of Nolan and Pine on the east side. In fact, the building still stands. And my dad's barbershop was a tiny two-seat barbershop. And to save money in order to send me to Central Catholic, and I also went to parochial school before that, he moved us into the barbershop. We had lived in a duplex close to downtown, so he moved us into the barbershop. He partitioned half of the barbershop, and it wasn't even a full address because it was half of it was a barbershop and the other half was a print shop. There was a wall in between, and so we lived in a half of a half. And the name of the address, our address was 908 and a half Nolan Street. I mean, who has a half in their address?
Shared that building.
Oh yeah. So we lived in that little tiny space. I mean, it was just very small, and so consequently, my dad, we didn't even have a phone. The only phone we had was a payphone inside the barbershop next to the shoe shine stand. On the weekends and in the summer, I was the shoe shine boy. And so every night, my dad would give me 3 dimes. And I would take those dimes and I would go into the barbershop, sit on the shoe shine stand in the dark, and I would dial on the payphone my friends, usually girls, and play these little 5-minute shows that I had produced. Because I didn't wait, and this is my big message to kids: is don't wait to give yourself experience. Whatever your dream is, start doing stuff now. And now, because of technology, there's so many more ways. If I'd had the internet, my gosh, no telling what I could have done. But I was sitting there before I would go in there. I'd have a little record player and a tape recorder, and I would record these shows. I'd play records, and I would introduce them just like on the radio. And I would go to sleep, and I would think to myself, one day I'm going to be on that station. It was KTSA in San Antonio. And I would listen to KTSA and underneath my pillow, in my little portable radio. And in the morning, it would still be on. And I would spend my allowance on batteries. And so I would listen and say, one day I'm going to be on that radio. So when I went to San Antonio College, I had my major was art. And I remember it was registration day. And I had finished getting all my classes, and I got these great art classes, et cetera. I was very excited. And I'm walking down the hall, and I see this door with a square window on it. And I said to myself, that looks familiar. And I said, wait a minute. That's the same kind of door I saw at KONO. Because my friend, Don Tauser, had invited me to come and sit in on one of his shows. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I wonder. And I remember it was kind of high up, and I had to stand on my tiptoes and look in, and I saw this control board, a radio station control board. And this guy was walking by, and I said, what is this? He says, oh, that's the SAC radio station. I said, radio station? For what? This is the radio TV department. I said, you mean there's a department? Yeah, you can get a degree. A degree in radio. Oh, my. So I made a beeline. I used my bus money to go to the payphone, and call my dad and ask him if I could change my major from art to radio and TV. Wow. He said, absolutely, son. And I have never looked back.
Wow. That is amazing. I've heard you tell your childhood story about the barbershop. I just think it's amazing that you did that. And that started your
just
career.
goes to show you, yeah, your dreams don't care where you came from. Mm-hmm. And dreams don't care who the dreamer is. Mm-hmm. And so consequently, we're able to, bring to ourselves all the things that we want to do in life simply by deciding that that's what we want. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times people put up these different shields and say to themselves, well, that's not going to be me. No, that'll never be. And you end up talking yourself into not succeeding. And you can just as easily do the opposite and tell yourself, and here's another thing. When I dreamt of that radio station, I was actually putting it out into the universe. I was asking God, I was asking the universe, okay, this is what I want. And I believe that your thoughts not only become your attitude, but they also work on your behalf. Mm-hmm. Scientists now tell us that thoughts are things. Thoughts are energy, and they can be positive energy or negative energy. And so by doing that, already the wheels were in motion for what was to come in my life. Mm-hmm. So after San Antonio College, I transferred, because San Antonio College is only 2 years. So I went to UTEP in El Paso. At the time, it was Texas Western. Mm-hmm. And continued there. And while I was there, again, I'm at the college radio station, and one of my classmates says, "Hey, Sonny, they're looking for a weekend DJ on KELP." That was the number one station in El Paso. Mm-hmm. And he says, "I know the program director. Let me call him. Yeah, because you'd be great." Because I was always always at the radio station. And that's another thing. The experience you give yourself. I don't care if it's in your room, if it's on your phone. if it's whatever you're doing and whatever you want to do, that experience is experience. Years later, when you've had all those years of doing it over and over, and you see this all the time with like American Idol, when they do the backgrounds on these singers, and they'll say, well, when I was this age, I would, go in my room and I would sing, and then they're giving. I tell you, I just interviewed Johnny Mathis, and he told me that when he was young, this before he had a recording contract, he would take records and record them, and then record himself singing with a singer like Barbara Streisand.
Wow!
As if he was doing a duet. Imagine Johnny Mathis.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Johnny is now, and in case you're listening and you don't know who Johnny Mathis is, Google that name. He's one of the greatest entertainers of all time. In fact, his handle now is the voice of romance, and he certainly is that. But he's now in his 80s, and he still performs. He still records. He has not stopped recording since the 1950s. Phenomenal. And I'll tell you something else. You can listen to my interview with him. If you go to sunnyradio.com/show, you'll see all the shows that I've done and the interview I had with Johnny. But he sounds exactly the same as he did when I met him back in the 70s in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And that's the great thing about your joie de vivre, your joy of life.
Mm-hmm.
That allows you to stay young. And you don't have to be old in your head. You don't have to be old in your thinking. You can be young. And when you are, you continue to feel young. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people tend to be old just because their thinking got old. But anyway, the idea that I was going to be on a radio station was just phenomenal. So my friend says, here's the program director. He calls him. I said, no, don't. He hands me the phone. And as soon as he handed me the phone, I said, hello. And I went into a radio voice, right? and he says, I understand you're interested. No, not just my regular voice. And by the way, that's another thing is I'll tell you about that dream and how that transpired. But I went into this radio voice, and he says, I understand you're interested in the position. The weekends? I said, yes. And he says, come in at 10 o'clock on Monday morning and bring an air check. And I said, yes, sir. I sure will. All right. Great to talk to you. See you Monday. Bye. I hung up the phone, and I looked at my friend. I said, what's an air check? and he says, that's a tape of your work, of what you sound like. Mm-hmm. Well, normally I would record something at the radio station, the college station, but the equipment was being replaced, so I couldn't do that. So I reverted back to, again, finding a way to get some kind of a show. And of course, I had all this experience with my little tape recorder and my record player, and I thought, where can I go to do this? And at the time, the big thing on radio, all the DJs, you would hear them, it was echo. Their voice would echo, and it was just kind of like a reverb. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, where can I go to get that kind of a sound? Well, I was staying with my aunt while I was going to college there, and I rented a recorder, reel-to-reel recorder for $5, and I had a record player, and I went into my aunt's bathroom, and I put the record player on the commode. I put a board across the bathtub, and I had the recorder there. It's a wonder I didn't electrocute myself. And so I made the show just like I did when I was a kid. And I created this little show, and I wore my suit, and I show up on Monday morning with my little tape in hand, and I play it for him, and he says, oh, this is very good. He says, okay, well, we'll start you a week from Sunday. And I'll tell you something, JJ. I went in on Sunday morning at 5 a.m. The station was off the air from midnight to 5 for maintenance. And so I would actually go into, and it was a rough neighborhood. And so I lived not far away. I was like maybe a $1 cab ride, but I couldn't afford to walk because you never knew what might happen. So I would take a cab at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock on Sunday morning. And I would turn the radio station on, and then I was on the air from 5 a.m. to noon.
Oh, wow.
7 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, 5 a.m. 5 a.m. to noon.
That's
And
a
then
long
from
time.
noon to, yeah, it is. But let me tell you something. And then from noon to 4, I was the news person for the next guy.
Oh, wow.
So it was a long day.
Mm-hmm.
But I would look at the clock. I'd be on the radio, and I'm playing the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Sonny and Cher, the Monkees. I mean, just all these great songs. And I'm thinking to myself, this is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting paid to have fun. This is incredible. And I would look at the clock, and I would say to myself, oh, good, I still have 4 more hours. Oh, good, I still have 3 more hours.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I don't care whether I am on a stage, at a conference, or whether I'm on the radio, or any kind of performing, I look at the clock and I say, oh, good, I still have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way I've always looked at life. So it wasn't long before I made a name for myself. In fact, it was I went on the air, I think, in September, and I was still going to college. And then by January, I got a call from the competition, a little daytime station in El Paso, KINT. And the program director said, how much you making over there? I said, $1.25 an hour. And he said, how'd you like to work full time and make $1.50? Well, I thought, this is unbelievable. This is incredible. $1.50 an hour, and I'm working full time. I was doing afternoon drive, and I'm just incredible. So I took the job, and wouldn't you know it, a few months later, the guy who hired me, the program director, quit. He went to another station, and I became the program director.
Oh, wow.
So there I was 19 years old. I was one of they told me I was the youngest, but I'm sure, even if there was somebody else, I don't think I'd be any younger. The youngest program director of a radio station that size in the country. But I knew what I was doing because I literally lived and breathed the radio. I mean, it was in my blood. Mm-hmm. And so I was hiring all the people. I was creating all of the, promotions. And we would have, the station that we were up against, I mean, they were number one. They had like a 40 share. We had like a 5 share. And so that's what I had to compete with. But I would find ways to make this little station do big things. I'll just give you an example. In El Paso, there was a smelting company where they would, the smelter where they would take ore and turn it into all kinds of different things. And they had these smokestacks. In fact, they still stand, even though the company is no longer there. But the smokestacks would permeate into the city, and you'd have this sulfur taste in your mouth. And people would always complain about it. And the Texas Air Control Board would come to town, and the wind would blow the other direction. And so they'd say, no, there's no problem here. So they were going to come to town, as they do every year, and we wanted to make sure that they got the message that people were not happy with what was going on. And so we asked on the air, we said, we want the names of the signatures of 350,000 El Pasoans who think we have a pollution problem. And so we went to malls, we went everywhere, and people signed this petition. So then we made a copy of the petition, and it was like maybe, 200 or 300 pages. And there were 5 people that came from Austin, and I met them at City Hall, and I gave them each a copy of all of these signatures, along with a transistor radio that was soldered. It was locked in to our station. You couldn't turn it off, and you couldn't You couldn't turn it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the air that day, all day long, we played a song by Johnny Mathis, as a matter of fact, On a Clear Day You Can See Forever. We played it over 350 times. And in between each time we played it, we'd read off 50 names. Well, by the time they left to go back to Austin, they decided that, yes, we did have a pollution problem, and they ordered the company to raise their smokestacks 100 feet.
Oh, wow.
So that's what's so incredible about what you can do if you have ingenuity. It's almost like David and Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you've got that slingshot, you got that idea, you got that passion for finding a way, you can do it. You don't have to be a giant. You don't have to be number one. So as time went on, I started getting all these national awards, and within a few years, I got a call from San Antonio, and the call was to be a program director and on the air at a station here in San Antonio. I accepted the job, and so there I was on the air at KTSA, the station I had had under my pillow growing up.
That is amazing. That is just amazing to hear. And your story, you know, everything you just talked about is going to come back full circle at the end, even with me. In my experience, you know, meeting you, this is not the first time I've met you or been able to talk to you. I've had the privilege and honor to be in your presence numerous times. But just to kind of briefly give the listeners some of the shows you've been on. You've been on the Jetsons as Mr. Rocket. Welcome Back, Kotter.
Yeah.
A few Disney shows that you even hosted.
The Disney show, that was a real kind of a serendipity. And again, this goes back to, you know, if you've got a dream, you've got to find a way to pursue it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in Los Angeles, actors and people who host these shows, etc., usually when they're looking for a host, their agent will submit them, and then they go to what is known as a cattle call, where you have a lot of people going to audition for this particular position. And I heard this is in 1981. I heard that there was going to be something called the Disney Channel. That Disney was going to have their own channel. And I thought, you know what? That's perfect. I love Disney. It was one of my three dreams: radio, television, and someday to work for Walt Disney.
Yeah.
And so I was radio, cartoon voices, and Walt Disney.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than to have wait for a call for a particular hosting job, I told my agent, I said, look, I have an idea for a show, and I want to present it to the powers that be. So he got me an audition, and JJ, I'm standing in front of these four suits, as they call them, because they're all wearing suits. There's three guys and a lady, and I had this idea called Saturday in the Park. And the idea was that there'd be like 20 kids that I would go with. They would go with me to different parks all over the country. Yellowstone Park, just all these different parks all over the country. And the guest stars on the show would show up in different parts of the park. And so I'm going through all my gyrations. I'm standing in front of them. I'm telling them this is going to happen, this and this is going to happen. And while I'm doing this, at one point, the lady looks to the other three guys and kind of makes a face. And I thought to myself, and she kind of nodded, and she just kind of, and I thought to myself, they're not buying this. And now they're making fun of me. But I did not let up. I kept my enthusiasm up, and I expected after I was finished for them to say, thanks, but no thanks. Don't call us. We'll call you. But here's what they said. They said, Sonny, this is a nice idea. It's not what we're looking for. However, because of your enthusiasm, we think you'd be perfect for a show that we already have in production called You and Me, Kid. Would you be interested? Well, needless to say, I said yes, and I hosted the show It was on the air for 9 years
Mm-hmm.
on the Disney Channel.
That is
So
amazing.
yeah.
One of your small parts in one of my favorite series is of course Rocky, and I am um, a huge fan. Lo and behold, you're in Rocky, and you are in Rocky number two as a reporter. And I once I saw that pop up one time, I was amazed because I was like, Sonny Melendrez is in Rocky. Like I could not believe it. But you are actually interviewing Apollo Creed and Rocky, getting ready into their second fight, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. To know that a San Antonio native was in Rocky, got to got to hang out with Sylvester Stallone, and of course Carl Weathers and all those other great people. And speaking of those A list, you have met so many people throughout your career. Obviously, you have met the Pope for one, which you have a great story for that. If people don't know, you were able to get a chance to meet the Pope with people from St. Francis, is I believe.
Right, right. There was a teacher at St. Francis, Sister Joe, as a matter of fact. She was the art teacher at St. Francis, and she invited me to come and speak to the girls. St. Francis, of course, all girls school, and so I would always go to all these different schools and do these pep rallies. And so I went, and afterwards she walked me to my car, and she said, "You know, Sonny, if you ever go to Rome, our order of nuns takes care of the Vatican. So maybe we could get you to see the Pope." And I said, "What?" She she said it again. I said, "Oh my gosh! Well, I'm going to Rome." I mean, at that moment, and again, it goes back to that thing about the wheels in motion.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, you put your order in, and stuff starts to happen. And of course, this was a very positive thing. And so that morning, this is like July, and the Pope was coming to San Antonio in September. This is Pope John Paul II. And I had read this article about kids in Seattle who were writing to the Pope so that when he came to Seattle, he could kind of address some of the things that were on their mind. And I thought, what a great idea. So I thought maybe we could do that with the kids here in San Antonio. And then when Sister Joe said that, I thought to myself, okay, I've got to figure out a way how to get to Rome. Well, that night, I went to the grand opening of a travel agency. And lo and behold, one of the guests was the national promotions director for what was then Trans World Airlines, TWA. And we got to talking, and he says, well, listen, if you ever have any ideas for a promotion, let me know. You do something at KTFM. I said, sure, absolutely. And I said, as a matter of fact, we're thinking about taking letters from the children of San Antonio and delivering them to the Pope. And he said, well, put that all together because we have a new flight from New York to Rome that we'd like to promote. So all of a sudden, in my head, these wheels are turning, and I thought to myself, okay, how am I going to get the time off to go to Rome? And so I walk into the program director's office. His name is Bill Thorman. And I said to him, Bill, we're going to Rome. And he says,
Wow.
what? And I told him about the whole idea.
Uh-huh.
And sure enough, 30 days later, we were in Rome in front of the Pope, delivering hundreds of letters from the children of San Antonio. All because of that one thing that Sister Joe said to me. But again, I don't think that things happen by accident.
No, they don't. You've had the privilege of meeting people or interviewing people like Aretha Franklin, Stevie Wonder, Lonnie Anderson, Casey Kasem, Sybil Shepherd, Elton John. The list goes on and on. But you were also presented with a watch from B.B. King. What was that about?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I introduced B.B. King at the university in Las Cruces, and it was a great show. and we kind of bonded in the dressing room before and then afterwards. And afterwards, we're just kind of talking. And I said, okay, BB, well, thank you, man. He did a great job. And, he has his guitar was called named Lucille. And so he's got Lucille, on his shoulder, and he's, saying goodbye. And as he's walking off, he says, Sonny, come here. I said, what? And he takes a watch off of his wrist. And it was a watch that the face of the watch was his latest album. And he says, I want you to have this.
Wow.
And he gives me his watch. And I'll tell you something, that was just one of the most incredible moments. And there was a photographer there who took a picture of that moment. Mm-hmm. And in fact, we're kind of touching each other's hands. You can see it if you go to my website. If you go to SonnyMelendrez.com, mm-hmm. or just Google B.B. King and Sonny Melendrez. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's on my Facebook page as well. Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
That is. But do you ever have a favorite interview that you just sit back and kind of were like, I can't believe that just happened?
Yeah, there's a couple. One of them was when I was on the air in Los Angeles on KMPC. I was doing a late night show, and it was like 10 o'clock, and I get a call and this comedian, he says, Sonny, I just left the studio. We just finished the album, finished mixing the album. You want a new comedy album? He says, you want to premiere it on your show? I said, come on down. So he shows up, and for an hour, we play these tracks from the album, and we talked in between, and it was just hilarious because it was like, it was surreal. I couldn't believe it because he was like one of the biggest comedians at the time. He still is a big name, and he was definitely, he was just kind of himself, both on and off the air, but he was extremely funny and silly on the air. And that was Steve Martin. Now, let me tell you this little sidebar, JJ. This is unbelievable.
Steve Martin.
So that was back. Yeah, Steve Martin. Yes. So that was back in the 1970s. Well, a few years ago, Steve Martin, because back then, he got his start. He made a national name for himself on Saturday Night Live, and he was on the air with the Wild and Crazy Guys with Dan Aykroyd, and he just do these crazy skits. And then he went on, and he was all of a sudden doing these big stadiums. He went from doing little tiny clubs to stadiums where 20,000 people, and he was like really big. So he wrote a book about his stand-up years, and called Born Standing Up. And my wife, this was a few years ago, my wife bought the book, and she kept wanting to quote pages from it. She said, oh, listen to this. Listen. I said, no, don't read it. I want to read it myself. So I remember it's a Friday night. I was in my office at home, down the hall from our bedroom, and my wife, Linda, she screams, Sonny, come here. And I thought she had fallen or something. I walk in, and she's sitting in the bed, and she's got the book. She says, listen to this. And she starts to read this part of the book. And I thought to myself, I've heard that before. Where have I heard that before? How could I have heard that if I didn't have not read the book? And then I realized I wrote what she was reading.
Oh, wow.
And what had happened was, at the end of the book, in fact, I don't have it in this room. I was going to read it. But at the end of the book, he says, as I was reflecting and finding different stories and researching those years, nothing says more about what that time was like than this exchange, this description by the host of a radio show, Sonny Melendrez.
Wow.
And he starts to tell his description, and he says, the hour went by really quickly. He was very funny. And then at the very end of the interview, this is me talking in the book, the very end of the interview, he got very serious. And he said to me, Sonny, I was wondering, we've gotten to be friends. I know you. I feel like I can ask you anything. And I thought to myself, what, is this the real Steve Martin? Is he going to be his real serious self? And I said, sure, Steve, you can ask me anything. And he said, what time is it? And JJ, those are the last words of the book.
Oh, wow.
He closed the book with my story. So I tell, when I tell that story, when I speak in front of the audiences, I tell them a story. I said, so without realizing it, I wrote the end of Steve Martin's book, and he is going to write the foreword to my book.
There you go.
And people go, all right, yeah. I said, he just doesn't know it yet.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
But how cool is that?
That's a good story. That's a once in a lifetime. So yes, I guess that would be one of your wow moments.
Yeah. And the other two were Dick Clark, who I wanted to interview. Mm-hmm. So the two people that I wanted to meet when I first got to LA, one was Dick Clark and the other was Casey Kasem. So with Dick Clark, I called him and he graciously said, I can give you 30 minutes. And we made an appointment. And when I got there, we hit it off so well. I was there for almost 4 hours. And he then also asked me to help him promote the American Music Awards, which I did.
Wow.
And I have all these pictures, with the different people at the awards and also, of course, with him. Mm-hmm. But the other thing was when I was back in San Antonio, we would play these weekend shows called American Top 40. Mm-hmm. And that was, of course, hosted by Casey Kasem. And Casey would, in fact, he's still on Sirius XM. They play his shows. And he would tell these stories he'd count down the top 40 songs, mm-hmm. According to Billboard Magazines. Mm-hmm. And he would tell these stories in between. And so I would think to myself, this guy's got the greatest job in the world. Playing the best music in the world, the most popular, and telling stories. And he was on about 500 radio stations. And I thought to myself, what must it be like to be on the air behind that microphone? Because I've seen a picture of him, and it's this iconic microphone. And to be able to do this every week. Oh my God, that was a dream job. So when I got to LA, besides contacting Dick Clark, I also contacted Casey. Well, by the time I called him, I had already been on the air on KMPC for a couple of years, and he had listened to my show. And it's so funny because I said, hey, Sonny, Casey, my name is Sonny Melendrez. Hey, Sonny, how are you? Yeah, I listen to your show all the time. You had that great, incredible voice. Hi, this is Casey Kasem. And so we got to be friends. And a couple of months later, he calls me and he says, listen, I'm going to be going on vacation in a couple of weeks. I was wondering if you might sit in on my show and do the countdown. You should have seen the look on my face, JJ.
Wow.
I was like jumping out of my body. I mean, it was like unbelievable. And I said, well, yeah, sure, absolutely. And so there I was 2 weeks later behind that iconic microphone, counting down the hits in all the land. In fact, if you Google Sonny Melendrez American Top 40 I forget which was cited on, but you can listen to one of the intros that I did. You hear the jingle and just everything else. Wow. But again, it's what you decide you want. And a lot of people, they can't decide what they want. They don't know what they want to be when they grow up. Mm-hmm. Once you decide that, that's half the battle.
Yep.
The other part of it is the work you put in.
Yep. and definitely going to get to that a little later. Um, but last Friday, we lost an icon, Regis Philbin. And some of the people don't know that you actually got to meet him and had a little bet with him during the NBA Finals in 1999.
That's right. Um, Here's a story that I've not told. I actually met Regis before his career even started. He had actually been on the show. I should say that his career had come and gone. He was, this is in the 1970s. He had been on a show called the Joey Bishop Show. He was the announcer on this. It was like a talk show. Joey Bishop was a comedian back in the 60s. And after the Joey Bishop Show ran out, Regis was out of a job. And so Regis would do these different shows. He'd MC these different shows. And he was emceeing one, and these were in person. He was emceeing one at the Long Beach Convention Center. And there was like maybe 1,000 people in the audience. And they had different performers, and one of them was a comedian. Well, I was not only on the radio in LA, but I was also still did my comedy. And so I was the comedian on the show. And of course, he introduces me, and afterwards we're talking, and he says to me, he says, yeah, Sonny, you do these gigs and you make a few bucks here and you do on weekends. And I'm thinking, that's great advice. And so then later, there was a show that opened up, which is kind of like Great Day SA here in San Antonio. It was called Good Morning LA, something like that. And so he ended up hosting that, and I ended up being a guest on the show. And then he came to the attention of people in New York, ABC, and they were putting together a show that was going to be a national talk show, and it ended up being with Kathleen Gifford, Regis and Kathy Lee. So while he's doing that show, I contacted him. He remembered me, and I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to make a bet with you. This is 1999, when the Spurs were in the NBA playoffs with the New York Knicks. And I said, look, you're in New York. Here's what I'd like to do. If the Spurs win, if the Knicks win, I'll put on Knick attire. I'll put a jersey on, a banner, and I'll have a picture of myself in front of the Alamo for all people to see. And but if the Spurs win, then you have to stand in front of a well-known landmark in New York and wear Spurs attire, and I'll send you the jersey. So the Spurs won 5-1, 5 games to 1, and so they won, in five games, and so he sent me. This is like I figured he had forgotten, but he sent me these two pictures. One of them, he's in front of the Lincoln Center for Performing Arts. Another one, he's holding up, and he's wearing the Spurs jersey, the David Robinson jersey, and he's holding a banner. And then on the other one, he's holding up this sign, kind of like he's the Statue of Liberty, and it says, "Wait till next year." And in the background, you can see the Statue of Liberty.
Yep.
But that's the kind of guy he was. He always was just so down to earth. Never forgot where he came from, but at the same time, he was as nice to everyone. He treated everyone like they were his best friend.
Wow, that's an amazing story, and you can actually see that picture of Regis on your Facebook if people want to check that out. That is cool, wearing the David Robinson jersey. When I saw that, I really was drawn to that moment. Another iconic time in your life in 1988. This is something that I will always remember. You were the host of the National Just Say No drug rally, which was held at the Washington Monument with then First Lady Nancy Reagan. Tens of thousands of people were there as you read the pledge. I myself took that pledge and oath in school. President Ronald Reagan later commended you for your efforts on the war on drugs, and you received a National Directors Community Leadership Award from the FBI. How do you feel about being commended by President Ronald Reagan for this award?
Well, it was a great honor. By the way, I want to say, JJ, you really did your homework. I'm very impressed.
Well, you don't
No,
always get to interview an icon like you, and
no,
you are one that has always stood out to me.
You're very kind. No, I was just so impressed not only to get the invitation to host the Just Say No rally. There was about 50,000 kids there at the Washington Monument, and the neat thing about it was that Nancy Reagan was not only there with me on stage, but then she later went down and sat because they were all all the grass area was all filled with kids. So she sat right in front with a group of kids, and that's when I had them all take the pledge to say no to drugs and alcohol and tobacco, and got this picture of her sitting with the kids, raising her hand as I'm giving the pledge, and then get the letter from President Reagan, saying that Nancy and I are really proud of what you've done, et cetera. And I'll tell you something else. A lot of people say that the war on drugs, the Just Say No, did no good because it was just yeah. And I can't tell you, since then and to this day, I will get kids who come up to me and say, "You came to my school when I was in 5th grade. You came to my school when I was in 3rd grade. You came," and I'll never forget what you said. And I never did drugs. Mm-hmm. And so, to me, that speaks volumes. We cannot give up on our kids. We can't just assume that stuff doesn't work. We have to be positive, and we have to give them that example. And by giving them that example, we're also giving the next generation that example.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And to me, remembering the Just Say No, I think here in San Antonio, that kind of tied into the Dare to Be Drug Free that San Antonio started. I know you have done some stuff with that as well. So I think all that kind of tied in. And to this day, that still is something that is remembered in school all around and supported in schools. Drug Free Week and Red Ribbon Week, I believe it is. And
Red Ribbon, it continues to this day, JJ.
And that is, that has your name all over it. You set the bar for that. And today I still remember, I have people, talking about how they do remember you going and doing these presentations. And that to me is still going on. People still remember it, and it has made a difference.
It truly does. And I'm glad to see that the Red Ribbon Week is still a staple of great schools across the country, especially here in San Antonio.
Well, I'm already kind of getting a little teary-eyed, but I told you this story would come full circle. And Just Say No to Drugs, drew my attention to you. But at a very young age, you changed my life. Sorry. I had the opportunity to be on a show with you that you hosted with Spurs forward Terry Cummings back in the early 90s. And I was so nervous, as I am today. And I had the opportunity to ask a Spurs player a question. And I'll tell you what, from that moment on, I knew I had that vision that you always talk about, that belief that, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be around athletes. And I've had the amazing opportunity to be around so many, many, many athletes, from Kobe Bryant, Shaq, Tim Duncan, Manu, Tony, WNBA superstars. And because of you, I had that dream. So I've always wanted to thank you for that.
Wow. Well, that's great. That's great to hear. I'm so thrilled. Yeah. The show was called Teammates, and I co-hosted with different Spurs, but for the most part with Terry Cummings. Mm-hmm. And Terry Cummings was, of course, a Spur back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And he was such a special guy.
He
He was
was.
very, soft-spoken, great basketball player, but also a very creative, musician, he's a
Yes.
songwriter and singer.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
In fact, on one of the shows, and I've got to find it, I'm going to put it online. One of the shows, he wrote a song together
Oh, wow.
uh, in the episode. Yeah, and he sang. Uh, the great thing is he had this wonderful voice that was coming out of this big guy, but it was just an incredible experience. And in fact, he's now producing music in Los Angeles. So he has a studio there. He's continued that, gone down that track.
Oh, wow. Yes, I would love to see footage of that. And I could not remember the name of the show for the life of me. But when you said it,
Yeah, teammates.
teammates, that definitely was the name of the show and something that'll always stick out with me for a very, very long time.
That's
Uh,
great.
Sonny, you talk about your vision at 13, and then 9 years later, here you are, hosting the station, programming the station. Could you ever have imagined that at that age you would be where you are today?
No, I didn't. I didn't look at it as far. People say you have to have a goal. My goals were mostly dreams, and I couldn't wait to get to where I was going, and consequently, I got there much faster. If I had said, okay, in 5 years I'm going to do this, in 10 years I'm going to do this, and I've never been that kind of person. I've always thought once I set my sights on a dream, something that I wake up with, something that all of a sudden is a light bulb that goes off in my head, then it's just a question of, okay, what do I need to do? I'm just going to start doing. And, I'll tell you a little story. I had a friend of mine who was an actor in Los Angeles, and we were having lunch one day, and he was lamenting the fact that he would go to these auditions and he would never get anything. And plus, he'd see a lot of other guys who were there who looked just like him, and he was just frustrated. And I said, "Well, so what are you doing to work on your craft?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, what are you doing to get better?" He said, "Well, I go to like different auditions." I said, "Well, that's not doing something. You've got to do things that are going to take you to where you want to be, and you can't assume that you can do that once you get somebody who's interested in you. You've got to do that every single day." So I came up with this little kind of a rhyme. Every day before you play, do three things that will further your goal. It's three things a day, 5 days a week. You take weekends off, and that's 720 um, uh, seeds that you plant over the course of a year. And when you do that, you literally can say, 1 year from now, I planted all those seeds. Well, if only two or three of them took root and led to something, we wouldn't have this conversation again in 1 year. So on a napkin, I wrote that down and I wrote the date. And sure enough, a year later, it was a little more than a year, I saw him and he had just landed a national commercial and also a part on a sitcom. And so I truly believe that you have to have, it goes back to that, what do you want? If you don't know what you want, how can you possibly get it? Imagine going into, Baskin Robbins and they say, yeah, what flavor do you like? And you go, I don't know. Well, you're not going to get anything
Mm-hmm.
because you can't make up your mind.
Yep.
But once you say, I want Rocky Road, I want, whatever flavor you want, all of a sudden now you can taste it, you can see it, you can literally enjoy getting to that point where you take that first bite and you think, oh my gosh, this is incredible, this is great, this is exactly what I wanted. And that's what it's like with your dreams. That's what it's like with your, whatever it is you want. And here's another thing. It has nothing to do with how old you are.
Yep.
You can be as old or as young.
Mm-hmm.
and still have this incredible dream. It's never too late. This is great saying. It's never too late to be what you could have been, might have been. And the other saying that I love is, what would you wish for if you knew it would come true? What would it be that you would say, this is what I want to do if you knew you couldn't fail? It's just an incredible, it's a law, I think. Yeah. It's a law of dreaming. It's a law of reciprocity in what you do for other people as well. Mm-hmm. I tell these great stories about things that have happened to me. I say great stories because they are powerful. One time I was in my car, I was listening to one of these shows where they talk about different restaurants and they give it a yes or a no. And it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm on the freeway. This lady calls in. She says, I was at the Bill Miller's over on Petranco, and I was in line, and there was a little old lady in front of me, and she didn't understand the concept of how Bill Miller's work. And the girl behind the counter literally started explaining to her every single thing. She said, well, you can have this, or you can have the roasted barbecue, or you can have the mac and cheese. And she took her time, was very patient with her. And I expected this lady to say, can you believe that it was lunchtime, it was a big long line, that she would make us wait just to explain this to this lady? That's not what she said. She said, I just wanted to call in and say that every one of us in line were so impressed with how she treated this little lady that we wanted to give her we applauded her. And I thought to myself, how powerful is that? Yep. Here's a young lady who works for Bill Miller, and she literally has been trained to do that, which is, says a lot about Bill Miller. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, through her example, she was able to inspire not only everybody in line, but the woman who called the radio station, inspire the listeners who heard the story, including myself. Mm-hmm. And now I've told that story on stage countless times. So imagine, just by that one small action, these waves of kindness have gone out, and who knows what other kindness they've inspired. They always say that there's. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, they always say there's 3 people who are involved in an act of kindness: the person receiving it, the mm-hmm. person giving it, and the person watching it.
You got it. And you have a story. Back in 2005, of course, you started to become a motivational speaker. And your main thing is intentional enthusiasm. And you tell this amazing story about Ruby. And I love to hear this story about Ruby so much. Do you mind sharing that story?
Oh, no, absolutely. It's kind of become my signature story.
It is your signature story.
Yeah, because I experienced it firsthand. Back when I was on the radio at KTFM, I would arrive at the station usually at 5, so I was on the road by 4:30, and I would usually grab something at Taco Cabana, breakfast tacos, on the way in. And one morning, I drove up to the speaker, and I heard this beautiful voice that said, "Welcome to Taco Cabana. How may I serve you?" And I thought to myself, well, they got recordings now. Yeah. And I gave my order, and then the same voice says, "All right, come on up. I'll have it for you. We're making some fresh bacon." And I thought, well, that's not a recording. So now I couldn't wait to see whose voice that was. I drive up to the window, and this lovely lady introduces herself to me. I mean, who introduces herself at a drive-thru? She says, "Hi, my name is Ruby. What is your name?" And she sticks her hand inside my car. And I'm shaking her hand and I'm going, I'm Sonny. I was so I was so taken aback by this wonderful, service. And she says, I said, we're making some fresh bacon. And by the way, did you want 2 sweetened loaves? Huh? Yeah. Yeah. And she's putting the sweetened loaf inside. This is before now they do that at different places, but before that, she was actually stirring it and making conversation with me. Unbelievable. So I couldn't wait to get on the air and tell my listeners about this lady, this Ruby. And I couldn't wait to get off the air to write a letter to Taco Cabana about this incredible service that I'd received. Well, come to find out, JJ, that in my little, 1-minute conversations that I would have with her every morning, and by the way, she would have these conversations with everybody. And sometimes there would be a line of cars because of the time she took with each customer, and people didn't mind waiting because they were going to be next.
And it was Ruby.
Yeah, it was Ruby. It was her wonderful personality. And I come to find out that she was a single mom. She had recently become divorced. Her husband came home one day and said, I don't want to be married anymore. And it was like she had the rug pulled out from under her. And how easy it would have been for her to say to herself, what am I going to do? I've got a 13-year-old son. I got to get him to college. How am I going to do that? I'm working in the middle of the night for minimum wage. It's over. That was not her attitude. Her attitude was one of enthusiasm. And every day she came to work and she served. And that's what she always said. How may I serve? How may I serve? And so consequently, one morning I came by and she says to me, Sonny, I was wondering, you wouldn't by any chance have any tickets for tonight's Spurs game, would you? And I said, no, Ruby, I'm sorry, I don't. And I thought to myself, if anybody, deserves to ask, it's Ruby. People are always asking me for, tickets or CDs or money, because of the stuff we give away on the radio. And I said, no, Ruby, I'm sorry, I don't. Without missing a beat, she says, well, I would like you to have mine. You see, I've been voted Employee of the Month, and I got these tickets, and I cannot go. And you're my best customer. I want you to have these tickets.
That is awesome. That was
unbelievable.
Amazing. Yes, that is. I love that story. It brightens my day.
And by the way, that kind of service and that kind of attitude, she wasn't at Taco Cabana very long. As a matter of fact, last time I talked to her, which was a couple of years ago, she was now an office manager for CPS.
Oh, wow.
And, and ran a whole office. But that's because cream rises. Someone is going to notice you. Mm-hmm. Someone is going to tell someone about you. Mm-hmm. Somehow you're going to be in front of the people you need to be in front of. All you have to do is do your part, stay positive, stay enthusiastic.
Sonny, everything we have talked about has kind of come back to the full circle of 3 things that you really talk about in your motivational speaking, and that is vision, belief, and gratitude. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, it goes back to that, having that, what flavor do you want? What ice cream do you want? What is the vision for yourself? Then the other part of it is, do you believe in yourself? You cannot expect anyone to believe in you, especially your kids or anyone, unless you believe in yourself. So every morning, look in the mirror, make eye contact. Some people find it very, very uncomfortable to look at their eyes and talk to themselves in the mirror. But get comfortable with yourself and say, I believe in you. Give yourself a pep talk. Say the things that you would love for someone else to say. Vision, belief, and the third part, and that to me, this is the most powerful, is gratitude. If you are grateful for what you have, rather than ungrateful for what you don't have, and I'll tell you, we're on Facebook right now. All you need to do is scroll down, and what do you see? People having fun, people having a great time, people, they just got a new car, all these things. It's so easy to say, oh, wow, it must be nice. Oh, wow, look at this. Oh, wow, look. But that's not the real world. The real world is you don't know what's going on in the lives of all these people, and you cannot compare yourself to them. Roosevelt said, comparison is the thief of joy. And it's true. When we compare ourselves, there's always going to be somebody who we think has got a better life than we do. But guess what? There are who knows how many people who think we've got the best life. Mm-hmm. And if you look at yourself and say to yourself, I'm so grateful. Thank you. Thank you, God, for another day. Mm-hmm. Thank you for this gift that you've given me. And you need only to look around and if you close your eyes and imagine that everything you have is gone. The people in your life, things in your life, your home, your everything. I don't care whether you've got bills or whatever. Just imagine that it's all gone. And then after a few seconds, open your eyes and see all the blessings that you have. Mm-hmm. That is what gratitude truly is. And it also will transpire into how it is you treat other people. My favorite quote, in fact, I've got it on the back of my business card, is something that was said by a philosopher who lived in the first century. His name was Philo of Alexandria. And what he said could have been said by any motivational speaker today. He said, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a great battle.
So true.
Who's to say that someone listening right now isn't going through a heartache? Who's to say that someone hasn't lost a loved one recently, especially with COVID? And who's to say that, the person in the next car next to you, even the guy that cut you off, the person who's belligerent in line or at Target, it doesn't matter. These are all human beings. In many cases, these are wounded human beings. So why wouldn't we be kind for every one of us who's fighting a great battle?
Sonny, that is an amazing story. And that is some of the things that I take from what you just said. One, believe in yourself. Be grateful for what you have. And you always say we are all in this here to help each other. We're all in it together. It has been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom throughout the years. And even today, I see so many people commenting, saying so many great things. And you have just come full circle with everything in your life, which is truly, truly amazing.
Well, JJ, thank you so much. And I want to tell you that, and I'm sure your fans, your listeners, your Facebook friends can all hear it in your voice. And those who know you personally can attest to this. But you are very, very special. And I think that, your ability to communicate and to inspire through what it is you do. You told me before we made this appointment to have this interview, you said that you decided one day to just go on and just do it on Facebook, and now you do this on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage you to continue to do it, because obviously you get better and better and better every time you do it. And I'm just honored to have been invited.
Sonny, thank you so much. You are truly amazing. Like I said, it's been a complete honor, and I'm definitely gonna get that Steve Martin book. I wanna see that. And
yeah.
For those of you who do not know, please check out sonnyradio.com. You can also check him out on Facebook and see all his cool pics of some of the people he's interviewed, been around. Of course, the Nancy Reagan picture is there as well. So, Sonny, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you being on today.
My pleasure. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, JJ.
You have a good day.
Okay. You too. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Guys, what an amazing day to have Sonny Melendrez on the show. I cannot believe it. that is truly a dream come true for me. I just am amazed at his wisdom. All these years, his motivational speaking, he is just truly one of a kind. And please check out his website, sunnyradio.com. He does have his awesome interviews and stuff up there. I don't even know how to continue the show, but I am going to continue on that note with an icon like that. Following up on this show is just simply amazing. I'm going to do the shout outs and everything too. Let's get into sports real quick. NBA action, of course, basketball is back. Go Spurs, go. Chants are starting up again in San Antonio. As Spurs take on the Sacramento Kings tonight at 7 p.m. You can catch it on Fox Sports Southwest. I am already in my Spurs gear. I know a lot of you thought I had Tim Duncan on the show. I don't know why, but this guy made the day today. So maybe we'll have some other superstars on the show pretty soon. But yesterday, Antonio Davis, LeBron James combined for 50 points as LeBron's last second possession led them over the LA Clippers 103-101. Kawhi Leonard had 28 points, 3 rebounds, and 4 assists in the loss. And Paul George added 30 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists as well. Of course, tonight, the Spurs kick off. You can also catch on ESPN tonight the Houston Rockets versus the Dallas Mavericks starting at 8. I know Spurs fans will not be tuning in, but other notable games tonight in the NBA, Nets versus Magic, Grizzlies versus the Trailblazers, Suns versus Wizards, Celtics versus the Bucks. So I know everybody will be tuning into the Spurs game tonight. MLB action, Rangers and Astros both, of course, had the night off yesterday. But my Yankees, however, did not, beating the Orioles 8-6. For my buddy, Missy Mendoza, your Braves picked up the win 2-1 over the Tampa Bay Rays. Today, the Rangers will face the Giants in a 3-game set in San Francisco. That should be interesting. Hopefully they don't wear those nasty baby blue uniforms looking like the Royals. Astros, of course, have the night off. They start back on Saturday against the Angels. The marquee matchup I will be watching tonight as well, aside from the Spurs, will be, of course, the Yankees and Boston Red Sox rivalry. 3-game set starting tonight. So super excited about that as well. We are at the point where we do some shout outs, but I do want to say one thing. I wanted to say this on Wednesday and I never got to it, but the Bob Hall Pier suffered some severe damage over the past weekend due to the hurricane. That opened in 1950 and was named after a Corpus Christi native and longtime government official who served in the Spanish-American War. And I'll tell you one thing, I love fishing there. I went fishing, of course, with my buddies a while back. And, I love sharks, and I got to catch a few sharks, and I'll never forget it. But, and yes, I threw them back in the water because that's where they are. That's where they deserve to be, but I do love them for some reason. I have no idea. But I'm devastated that the Bob Hall Pier was damaged. So those of you who have memories of the Bob Hall Pier, please share them, post them. I want to hear about them. So comment about your Bob Hall Pier memories on this cast and share with friends. We're going to go ahead and go into some birthdays. I know at the beginning we kind of started. For those of you that are Harry Potter fans, today's his birthday. That's pretty cool. Former Spur Tony Massenberg. Saturday, David Castro from SA Sports. My good buddy David, who loves to talk basketball. Michael Watson, my softball bud. On Monday, Jeanette Gutierrez, Paula Arocha, Go Irish, Heather Elizondo, Veronica Gutierrez. And on Tuesday, my lovely cousin, Jacqueline Akers, and is celebrating her birthday. And, of course, one of the Ortegas. It's either Iris or Jaime. These mutual accounts get me. But happy birthday. Happy birthday to JJ Redick, JJ Rattling, AFL quarterback. for some popular AFL teams. Melina Garza, and of course Russell Rush from 96.1 now. iHeart Music. Happy birthday, Russ. Um, this is an amazing day. I'm so excited. I am just mind blown that I had the opportunity to interview Sonny Melendrez. I hope you guys like the show. Share, comment, subscribe. You know, Sonny Melendrez's words today were truly, truly something to live by. And I really want this to spread because he had some amazing, amazing words of wisdom for us, especially in this time right now. I think, you know, we are all in this together is something, you know, you believe in yourself, you be grateful for what you have, and we are all here to help each other. And please share that message with everyone. Forward it, pass it on, share, please. And I hope you guys enjoyed the show today. I will be back on Wednesday, hopefully. And I am so super excited. I am going to be showing off the name of the show pretty soon, and because I still don't have a real name for it, but I'm going to be unveiling the name of the show pretty soon, and I will keep you guys posted. But thank you so much for tuning in. I know we went a little longer today, but hey, it was well worth it. I hope it was worth it for you as it was for me. Thank you so much for tuning in. You guys have an awesome, amazing weekend. God bless.